Gurgaon. That's great. Yeah, let's wait for everyone to join. So today's session is gonna be pretty packed. I'll be sharing a lot about how to get into product management. What does it mean? What are the kind of questions that are asked? It's going to be very tactical. And at the end, I'll stay back for some questions because people had some questions about like MBA in general or other things. But that's the idea. So we almost have 34 people. So I'm going to get started. So we are at time, and then we can discuss. So let me start by sharing a presentation. Right. Uh, in general, like product management right now has been pretty bad. Like, just for like heads up, right? I don't expect anybody walking out of this webinar and being like, oh, we have nailed it and we're going to get a job in like um, next 1 week. It's going to be a long process. So I just uh, request you folks to be patient with and just go through the process, right? I have gone through this process myself, and I can tell you that when I graduated from Harvard, this was a really really bad market. Maybe it's getting slightly better now. For 5 6 months I tried certain things which didn't work at all. I had like zero interviews, not even like the first interviews, right? Zero interviews, no resume shortlists, and I was just struggling. Then 1 month I kind of streamlined my entire process of preparing for product management, and I understood the right way to do it, right? I may not know everything how to do it, but I know a few ways that it can be done, right? And one thing I want to tell you is that you don't have to pay or take any expensive certification or any sort of courses which people will try to sell you as like, take my course. And I don't believe that will get you to your goal, right? It's just, if you're focused, there are enough free resources for you to get your product management journey and figure it out how to do it. I did it myself, and I would like to share. Let me get started by sharing a presentation. It's a short one, but we'll go through some of the tactical things, right? Uh, uh, Give me a thumbs up or yes in the chat if you can see the screen. Okay, that's great. Let's start it. So I just, yeah, just to get back to what I was saying, there was a time when I was recruiting, and it was so bad that when I finally got one interview, it went up to 12 interview rounds. And then they ultimately said they picked a candidate who had more years of experience than I did. So the point being that this is a very tricky journey. Like, you never know what clicks, what doesn't click. So what I would just tell everybody here who's thinking of applying to product management, to have that lens of patience and going through the process, right? I think in this market, the best thing that you can do is understand all the different rounds that happen in a product management interview and prepare for them. uh, People always think that, oh, if I get into an Ivy League, I'll make it into top product management company. That's not true at all, right? It's not true at all. In fact, in Silicon Valley, some of the companies even don't like having an MBA. It's considered negative. So there is this notion that just getting into a great school will get you a great job. That's not true at all, especially in this market. So what I have noticed a trend in terms of hiring is people are trying to hire for specialized roles more. I'll give you an example. So I did my product internship at Apple, and I did it in ads, and I was an ads PM. And what I noticed was, for full time roles, the only interviews, at least the starting ones that I got, were just related to ads. Even though I had worked in the summer internship was only for 3 months, people just over index on the little bit specialization that you have gotten during those 3 months, right? So if in the past you have worked in a particular area, I would say in this job market, try to get PM roles in that area. That would make that switch easier for you. So, for example, if you worked for some reason in the education space, or if you're a consultant previously and worked in a similar space, I would highly recommend that you get the PM role in that domain, right? Let's move on. Stop right now for any quick questions that people have right now based on just the general product mindset. Anything that, or maybe why don't you put it in the chat? What would you like me to cover? I have a prepared agenda. I wanted to take you through some of the my journey and kind of questions that get asked. But if there's anybody else who wants to put in the chat now what they want to get out of this webinar, I'll make sure that I also address that. So just put it in the chat now. I'm reading it. Whatever you want me to cover in this webinar. So, okay, we can cover how our product interview is different from consulting interviews. I'll share some thoughts on that. Anybody else has any questions or something that they would like to get out of this session? So I want to make sure that whatever you came in for, you get that. So put it in the chat. Whatever is it's something that you want me to cover. How to land a job at big companies, I will cover that. uh, Nikhil, I'll address your question. You completed your MBA and none of the famous techniques. Yeah, we'll cover on how do you approach it, right? You cannot approach a standard process in this scenario. The beginning point, where do you start, right? Okay, okay, got it. I think I'm going to cover anyway all of these, so that's good to know that people are here. So let's get started. So let's look at this, right? Like, I just want to share, this is probably the most heavy slide right now. So some of you may know about my journey, some of you are new here. So I'll just share very quickly, right? I was interested in product management. I got a summer internship at Apple, but the market was pretty bad. There were no return offers. I applied to Google in a very standard way, like which many of you people are talking about. The standard way to apply is not working. So I was doing that, right? I would go to the portal and actually just submit my resume. You could apply to only 3 jobs for Google at a time from one referral, and it would never pass the ATS. Like, whatever you do, it doesn't pass the ATS. So I would want people to think about changing the way they think about this job search, right? The one thing I would tell everybody is, I think I talked about this earlier also in the previous webinar. Please watch that if you haven't. It's on just like job search strategies. A cold referral versus a warm referral, right? A cold referral will not work. Like, a cold referral is somebody who you reach out to on LinkedIn and say, hey, can you refer me? And that person will refer you. Do you know why that person refers you? Because that person, if you get hired, gets $4,000. That's how it works in Google. And other companies give you like a lot of like, you get a lot of money for referring people, but that person would not be like, he may be referring like 50 other people as well. So the idea here is not to is not to basically get people to refer you in a cold way, but get like a warm referral. What does a warm referral mean? So whenever you ask somebody for a referral, also tell them like, hey, can you add this to my application? There is a process, there is a section in the referral form where we're told that, how do you know this candidate? Can you share where this person has worked in the past, so on and so forth. So get that. That's one important thing I would tell people to think about when they're thinking about just getting a PM referral. That would be really helpful. So yeah, uh, let's get started with the first interview, right? So I'll tell you, the Google interview in general has like five main parts, right? It's product design, it's product strategy, product analytics. It's a technical round, but some your role may or may not have a technical round, and then the fifth is googliness. Now, some of you may be applying to other product management roles, but in general, these are like the five main segments, or every interview that I have seen has had at least some of these, if not all. I interviewed with TikTok. I interviewed with a company called C3AI. I interviewed with a company which many people in India may know, Physics Para. I interviewed with them. I interviewed with portfolio companies of private equity firms. And in general, this was what's asked. I think the reason I'm following Google's framework here is because it's pretty standardized, right? So let's look into the first one, right? Let's say that, what do you think? Let me ask a question, right? Let's talk about product design. Like, which is usually the first round. What do you think is being tested in this by this question? What do you just put it in the chat? What do you think, if let's say you have a first product design question? What do you think is the interviewer testing in this? Like, few things which you think are being tested in this round. Put it in the chat. Let's see if for folks who have at least recruited or have some idea, what do you think is being tested in the first round? Usually the first round is product design, and a product design round basically means like the question that you see, right? Design a smart shoe. That's that's exactly the kind of question that you'd be asked. That's how the question would start. Okay, see some comments which say that Debbie says your understanding of customer needs, system level design. Okay, Bhavya says creativity, understanding of user requirement. uh, Ananya says, yeah, she's asking a question, what kind of a shoe would the customer be looking for? So, in a way, Like, I'll give you my idea, right? They are not specifically interested in the solution that you are getting at. Like, people think about, I have to give them the most creative solution. I don't think the solution matters at all, actually. It is only about how you get to the solution. That's the entire thing about this first interview. They are looking for people who have structured thinking, who can understand the pain points, and then build for the right persona. I'll talk specifics on how to do that, but this is exactly what they're looking for: structure in your thoughts, your understanding of the problem space, and how you communicate it. That, at high level, that's what they're looking at. So the number one mistake people make in these questions, design a smart shoe, is what I saw. Like, I'm sorry, Ananya, I'm going to call you out here, but so for example, people are saying it should be comfort, design, fashionable, trendy. I think people start getting into the solutions right from get go. Don't do that. Like, that's exactly what they want you to do, right? When somebody puts a very, it's a very vague question, design a smart shoe, right? Like, if you think about it, it's, you can build everything and anything under the sun, right? A smart shoe can be anything. The way you do it is by asking clarifying questions. Always start any interview by just asking clarifying questions. So, for example, you would ask the user, like, you could ask them that, okay, uh, what's our goal with this kind of a product, right? Is, what's the company trying to do? Are we building it for a particular geographical segment, or are we building it for a global launch? Like, these kind of questions show that you're thinking about what is, that you have some sort of thought in your mind. So, number one thing, always in product design, start by asking questions. There are, like, if you read some books like Cracking the PM Interview and stuff, they have like this, uh, I would say, like, whole frameworks which also, like, consulting folks use. I think it's called MISI, or, and I've heard of a framework called Circles. I don't believe in frameworks. I didn't have one when I was preparing, right? You need to just have general thought process. I mean, by frameworks, I don't mean that this should be like a standard thing, but you should have some sort of like a frame, like a, not a framework, but I would say, like, these are the 4 5 things I want to cover. But don't, like, stick to it. Like, I'm gonna throw the framework in the interviewer's face. They'll know that you're doing it. So the first thing that you would always do when you're given this question is ask clarifying questions. Right after asking clarifying questions, uh, usually they'll give you a company's name. So always start with the mission of the company. Like, for example, if it's YouTube, specifically, like, YouTube's mission is to give everyone a voice in the world, right? Talk a little bit about how this product could make sense for the mission. That shows depth in the thinking that this person has thought about. The next thing you want to do is, you can't build for everybody. At least in these interviews, you are building for a very specific niche segment, right? So think about ways to segment. That's the third step that you want to do. You want to segment these users into few pockets of users that may be interesting. The one way to segment could be, you could segment this, the smart shoe thing, by age, right? Maybe you want to build a smart shoe for kids, or you want to build a smart shoe for adults. Like, that's a decision criteria, right? The other way you could think about this is like segmenting by the use, right? Some people may use shoes for everyday walking purpose, but some may use, like, some athletes may use it for growing their performance, right? Like, these are different goals, but ultimately you want to pick one. You're like, I'm going to build for athletes, let's say. The next thing that you want to do is within athletes as well, right? What are the pain points of these users? Always start with the pain points. So the fourth thing that you want to do is go into pain points. So, what are the pain points of athletes today, right? Like, list them down. And while I'm thinking these, like, right now, because I've gone through this process, what you can always tell the interviewer is, can I take 30 seconds to write down my thoughts? And it's completely okay. People always feel like, oh, this person thinks I'm a slow thinker, I need 30 seconds. Nobody's going to judge you. What they're going to judge you on is if you get into the solution and say things and then say, like, oh, I've gone into the wrong thing. Yes, yes, Shravan, that's absolutely right. You should always start with the problem. So ask them, like, within these athletes, what are the pain points today? After you have had the pain points, like, tell the interviewer, okay, these are the 3 pain points that I've identified. Now, within those pain points, think about some sort of a way to prioritize these pain points. Like, how would you, they would ask you, like, which ones are the most important ones, do you think? And the way you could prioritize them could be by looking at the intensity of the pain point, or the overall impact it could have, so on. Like you can use different, it doesn't matter what you use as long as you give a justification of what you have used. So that's getting into like understanding the pain points and prioritizing the pain points. Once you have prioritized the pain points, the next thing you want to do is have a discussion with the interviewer on what are we solving for, right? We got into the this segment. What do we want? Do we want growth? Do we want retention? Do we want, like, what exactly are we targeting, right? Make that clear. And sometimes the interviewer may say you are free to decide. Just make sure that you take that into consideration, saying, okay, we're looking for a growth strategy for this company. I'm targeting the athletes whose pain point is that they're not able to track very efficiently their metrics today. Just this is like, so you see how we went from designing a smart shoe to this very niche and very strongly identified crisp statement. That's exactly what they're looking for, right? Now you can look at different solutions within this space because you have narrowed it. You can think better. So then you ask the interviewer, hey, can I take 30 seconds to basically uh, think about solutions for the space? And then you write those down. And once you write down the solutions, again, you go into the prioritization exercise saying that, hey, I was thinking that we can look at engineering effort, we can look at impact and prioritize some of these solutions and ultimately pick one of them that you want to build. And then ultimately, once you have the solution, you tie it back to the original prompt, right? Like we started with this, I narrowed down the statement, and finally, after narrowing down the statement, this is the product that I would like to build, uh, and this is the metrics that it would impact. You kind of give them a summary, but also a discussion, and that's how you end like this 30-minute kind of an interview, right? So this is a way a good interview works. Right now, I just showed you how to answer it, but how do you get started, right? People will be like, there was a question like, I have no idea how product management works. How do I get into this? So the best way is, trust me, just go to YouTube, right? Like YouTube has a lot of free videos that you can watch and look at. What I enjoyed, like I watched a lot of videos of people doing mock interviews, like exactly like this, right? So just search on YouTube, uh, product design interview, and maybe I think this company called Exponent does a good job. Like they have some free interviews, just watch those, right? They talk about exactly how the person answered the question in 30 minutes. Have your notes ready. So what I would do is I watched like three of them first or four of them first. From the fifth one onwards, what I did was I would just listen to the question, and then I would just try to answer it on my own, like the entire thing, and then watch the video. That ways you can think where you are differing, and that's the best way to learn product design, right? And I think of product design also is not like about always the fancy products, right? Like don't start with like, not everybody, don't start with things like uh how to design Spotify for kids. Like I don't think you should start that deep. Think about everyday problems, right? Like how would you improve the how would you design a smart refrigerator, or how would you improve your washing machine? These are products that you use every day. So always start with that. I'll stop here. This was like a little bit about product design. Anybody has any questions on product design, on how do we tackle it? Like the best strategy for product design is to watch 5 videos on YouTube end to end. They're like 20-minute videos. After that, and I'll share a link to all the members in the community on the videos I watched. After watching the first 5 videos, just make sure that you're watching these videos, but first you're answering the question yourself in your notebook and then continuing the process. So I'll stop here for the first product design part of it. I know this I've covered a lot of like how product design works. Maybe it's too quick for some people, but I can slow down. You can tell me anything that you want like to ask, right? So Sumant is asking, what framework do you suggest to approach product design question? Uh, so yeah, I think circles is relevant. Circles framework, for those who don't know, it's kind of like similar to what I was talking about. You can use that. The reason I don't use frameworks, I'll tell you why, right? Because what happens in these interviews, your mind gets stuck on these frameworks that, oh, I have to use circles. And sometimes a question, let's say it doesn't come, that doesn't fit into the circles framework, right? Like I think of it very simply, like start with always the mission of the company, like what's clarifying questions, mission, ask the pain points. First segment the user, ask the pain points. After getting the pain points, prioritize the pain points, solutions, prioritize the solutions, tie it back to the mission. This is how I think of it. but I don't have like a framework. I can move around, right? Sometimes it could be like the question be like, how would you grow users? So in that case, the goal is already there. So which is why I don't follow a framework, because questions may slightly vary, but these are the big building blocks that you must have. So I don't use personally frameworks. If they work for you, you should use them. They are helpful in keeping track and helps structure thoughts. I usually don't use any frameworks because it feels a bit unnatural to me, but you can use them. Okay, so I'm going to take a question now before we move on to the next one. Also, I'm going to keep the webinar to 45 minutes only, so we'll go a little bit quickly, and maybe we can have a more in-depth one later, just to be respectful of everyone's time. How? So somebody's asking, how do you land internships without experience? I'm a marketing student. So the way, so people who are trying to now pivot into product and don't have any product experience, I think a lot of you may have this question, like, how do you break into product? My number one thing to everybody who's trying to break into product and doesn't have experience is to do it, right? Like, unfortunately, in this market, that's the best way. I don't know how many of you attended the last webinar where I was looking at some AI tools, like how do you use LLMs in job search. One thing I talked about there was vibe coding. Does anybody know what vibe coding is here? If you know, put it in the chat, like if anybody has heard the term or knows what it means. Yeah, a few people have heard it, right? Nikhil, do you want to type it in the chat what it means, like just for everybody who's yeah, people are lovable. Yeah, so people have some idea. Just put it in the chat, like, yeah. Previous webinar link is already on the YouTube. You can watch it. I'll put it in the community chat as well. But the idea with vibe coding is basically you do not actually code. You get then AI to write code for you. You can describe what you want. Yeah, correct. And Nikhil, I think, put it better than I did. Basically, use LLM to convert that into executable code. Yeah, you can talk to an LLM and they will write code for you. For everybody who wants to get into product, I think this is the best way. Try to think of, let's say that you're trying to, okay, I'll tell you like one of the things, okay, it's a little of a personal story and my pain point, right? Whenever I go to a restaurant, like I find it hard to order something without seeing what it would look like. And then I would go and like look at different reviews. I would open apps like maybe Swiggy if you're in India, or DoorDash if you're in the US, to see what does the product look like in the photos. Now think of it as a solution where I could just have a web app. Let's say a web app where I would just say where I am right now, and it will just tell me the top 5 dishes ordered with their pictures. Right now, in a pre LLM world, this would be pretty hard to code for somebody who's in marketing, right? Like somebody had a question on marketing. Uh, but now it's very much possible. You can use Lovable to code that up and use that to solve that pain point for yourself. And once you do that, just post it on, build your like put it on LinkedIn or put it wherever your recruiters are, saying that I used these technologies to build this, and uh, this is how I thought about the pain points, and this is how I prioritize. Like, just building it gets you into the groove of product management, and then you can say I have experience. And trust me, the US market at least over indexes on even few months of work experience. I had 3 months of an internship experience in ads, and the only interviews I got initially were just ads. So the point here is that if you can get, like, trust me, if you get into it today, like just vibe coding, you will have something ready by tomorrow, and by Monday people will be like, oh, this person, you know, more than 90% of the people out there, it with just 2 days of effort. So, and that's how you build that delta, right? And next time when you're applying for a company which is looking at like Gen AI roles, you already have that experience to talk about. So yeah, I think people have, like Geeta says, Lovable plus Curse. I think people have a lot of experience. Both of them are great tools, right? To vibe code. So let's move on. I know there are a lot of questions. I'll stay back at the end for questions not also related to product, but in general strategy around job hunting, or people who are looking to study abroad, come to the US. So I'll just finish the meaty part of the webinar now. Uh, the next question is like product strategy, right? Let's move on to product strategy. Product strategy questions are, I would say, pretty open ended, right? Like you could get anything under the sun here. Like for example, like uh, a question could be, let's say, like Apple has launched a new version of iPhones uh, that is basically, and we see that Pixels sales are going down with the launch of this because people are switching to this. No, what should Google do? again, a very open-ended question, right? Like, or like, for example, something very relevant what's happening today, right? If you look at, so ChatGPT is taking over search from Google, right? Now what should Google do? These are the kind of questions that are typically asked in a product strategy question. These are open-ended in terms of how you think about it. There is no such or set framework, but my advice here would be to watch a few product strategy videos, because they work separately from, like, Meta's what is different from Amazon's is different from Google. But the way you prepare for this, I'll tell you, is have a list. So what I did was I had a list of each big company, 5 6 big companies, and their strengths and weaknesses. It's somewhat like understanding what the company is good at, what's it bad at, right? So if I give you an example of Google, Google is extremely good in terms of organizing information. It's extremely good in having distribution, right? A lot of people use Google products, but Google is not very good in terms of having a social media graph, right? It like, for example, in YouTube, we are not like, uh, we subscribe to channels, which, by the way, tells me, if you haven't, please consider subscribing to this channel. It really helps me and keeps me going and giving this video a like. But anyway, to the point, subscribe, like, Google doesn't have like a social media graph, and that's a weakness compared to any other company, if you say, like Facebook, right? So I always had this in my mind, where I would look at strengths and weaknesses, and anytime they're asking about a company, bring those in, right? So you, again, it's a similar approach. Start with the mission of both the companies, like, this is what Google is doing, and this is what ChatGPT strategy is. ChatGPT has gone early into the search, and now they have users. And then tell that, okay, now ChatGPT is trying to win the distribution game, and how can Google do better? So Google's strengths are not lying in this space, right? Google probably may not have the most used LLM today, like Gemini, but it has distribution. So you get into that angle where Google's strength is distribution, so it should play to its strengths, and here are a few things Google can do. In my mind, product strategy questions are very hazy, and they can go into any direction, and they're very much a dialogue, right? Uh, there's no one way to answer. But the best way you should do it is asking again questions that, hey, but when you say ChatGPT is taking over search, what do you mean, right? Like, which, is there a particular platform that's growing way faster? Is there a particular use case? And then go into it. That's a general idea about product strategy. I know it's a little bit vague, but product strategy in general is a vague segment where you have to understand the ecosystem of products, right? Like, who is doing what. Uh, One thing I would highly recommend in today's interviews, what you could be asked is about agentic workflows. So thinking about how companies are using agents in their day-to-day functionality, right? Like integrating agents, which companies are better suited to do so, which companies will lose the race, and things like that. Think more. I think the good thing about a product strategy interview is you can steer it the way you want to steer it. So you can always ask, like, take it into a particular angle that, because ultimately the recruiter is seeing, like, whether you have, or the interviewer is seeing if you have that kind of a thinking. So uh, okay, I'll stop for product strategy now. Any questions that you have, and then we'll go into product analytics, and which one is that's more structured and probably easier to answer. But let's uh, anybody. I'm looking at the few questions. So Sahil is asking, do you have any recommendations for a prototypes to be showcased in portfolio for someone trying to break into product management? Yeah, I would say, Sahil, since you worked in consulting and you're trying to get into product, uh, I'm sure within consulting you would have helped companies, right? So look at the spaces that they worked in, like they were operating in, and you could, in fact, the best way is to also ask ChatGPT, like, what are the biggest, like, look at Reddit threads, identify the pain points people are talking about, and give me three biggest pain points of that particular industry, and how we can build an app to solve it using vibe coding. You can literally ask ChatGPT that, and it'll give you like three things which you can actually start building. And then you go to Lovable and start, like, typing out those things. In fact, you can just, I think at one point you can just even automate that, right? Like getting input from ChatGPT to putting it into Cursor and seeing it code. But anyway, uh, the idea is that you could build a prototype that shows some sort of any kind of pain point that you have solved, and I would say even solve for your personal pain points, right? Like something which you would use. Like I was talking about an app that gets me pictures of the food in the restaurant that I'm going to, so that I can see and order what I want to, not just like the text. It's not a very big problem, but I think I personally find it like a pain point. So I'll go to the next question quickly. So Sumant is asking a question about vibe coding. Since one hasn't done any of the PM process to build it, how do you sell this to recruiters that you have the skill set? I think what vibe coding would do is, it'll, let's say you have no product, right? Like people will tell, okay, what have you built in the past, and how did you think about the metrics? You can use your own product that you build using vibe coding, right? I mean, every PM at one point had zero experience, right? Like every PM at one point had zero experience. They were in a different role, they were in a different job, or they didn't have, they just graduated. So I don't know why this PM has become such a thing that, oh, we need to have experience. Maybe it's the function of the job market right now, but I would just say, like, the way you sell your skill is showing that you have the aptitude, right? By And the best way to do it, like I say, is to building it and doing it. And you can trust me, this muscle, I'll tell you, right? Like I told, for 5 months, no jobs, and then 1 month landing a job at Google. You build this muscle over time pretty easily, right? Like, just follow my advice. I would just say, watch 5 videos for free on product design, and you will understand what I'm saying and why this works. It's as simple as that. You don't need to get into, I would also say, you don't have to read. uh, you could read the book Cracking the PM Interview, but I don't think it's necessary to read like long books. And the best way to do is get into it. Get like my biggest advice for somebody would be to get like a mock buddy, somebody who's prepared for this interview or is preparing, maybe somebody in this. So I think in the community we should do like a matching for people who are preparing for PMs. Set up dedicated half an hours and interview yourself. Like, you learn a lot. I'm happy to facilitate that, but I think is the real way of learning, especially if you're in similar levels. You learn a lot from each other. That's how I did it. Like, I learned the most from mock interviews, and just mock interviews. And start by watching those 5 videos and then get into mocks. I think you should be pretty good. Let's talk about product analytics now, right? In my mind, I think product analytics questions are the easiest to answer. They have a very set, like, kind of like principles to answer this, right? And it's funny. It's very funny how all these interviewers ask the same question in a different flavor. So I was interviewing with Apple, and Apple would basically say that, okay, so our ad revenue is down by 5%. How will you diagnose? The same question Google would ask by saying, our YouTube watch time is down by 10%. How do we diagnose? It's the same question, folks. Like, it's very simple to answer this question. You don't have to, the way you think about it is, in your notebook, list down, before the interview, different possible factors, right? I always thought of it as big buckets: external factors, internal factors. External factors, what could it be, right? Maybe somebody maybe there is an outage, right? Like, maybe there's a, like, even before that, that's like external versus internal. Other thing, it could be geography wise, right? Like, is there particular geographies that are affected? So you could ask users that, hey, which geography is the most impacted right now? Do we see a geography wise fall or an overall fall, right? That's a good first question to ask. Second question you could ask is it very drastic or happening just last week or overnight, right? That could give some indications. If it's drastic, maybe a product is not doing that well. If it's drastic, it could mean that there is some flaw in the algorithm or whatever, that we pushed an update that didn't do that well. Or if it's overtime, means something is happening strategically, right? Going back to what I was saying, external versus internal. External, look, it could be external factor events, like there's some major event happening. Let's say for YouTube watch time being down, somebody else is watching watching something else. Let's say there's some big political thing going on. People are watching that somewhere else on news TV, so people are moving. Maybe Netflix made some big move, so the competitor thing could be one thing. Then come to the internal, where internal things could be like the app update did not refresh, or you basically launched a new button that was hindering playback. So the idea is, like, you can build this kind of a tree and go into that with like different 20 like you have 10 reasons for external, 20 reasons for internal, and ultimately one of them would click with the recruiter, that, okay, is it this, is it this, is it this? The best part about this is this has a definite answer, because that's the interviewer has thought about it, and you can take it in that direction pretty easily, like by asking these 10 questions. It's a Product analytics is very commonly asked. It was asked to me in my internship for Apple in my second round. If those who are looking for internship, I'm pretty sure that you will get this. You'll get this. So, any questions in general on product analytics? Like, by the way, this is all that I'm saying in one session, which is not even like 45 minutes. Is extremely all the stuff I learned through like struggling in that 6-7 months. So this is the meat of all of that, and I hope that this is helpful for all of you. So let me know if you have any questions on product analytics, Anything that you feel like you want to ask. I'll then cover quickly the last two rounds, which are probably not as important as the first three, but nonetheless they are asked. So I'll just quickly share some light on them. Anybody has any questions on this? Okay, so we have a question. Are design questions asked for FANG interviews? So for product management, you're not asked system design. Like for product managers, at least in Google, it was not asked. So yeah, that's so I wouldn't worry about system design. That's a more technical question. I wouldn't worry about it. Oh, so we have a question. What do you think they are looking out for in the current market? So many openings, yet so difficult. I think what they're looking out for is like, I don't know if you're there in the start, Akhil, of the session. I talked about getting like a warm referral. Like that makes a lot of difference. But also, in my last webinar, I talked about how you could directly email some of these recruiters instead of going a standard path, right? That works out quite well. So the way, because the problem is the first round of shortlisting is automated. It happens through ATS, and that nobody has a control over. So if you can actually look at like how LLMs can be used to break through the ATS. Again, I covered that in the last webinar, so I don't want to repeat it, but please watch it. It's about how you can cater your resume. It's uploaded on YouTube. It's free. You can watch it, and that will basically help you break through the ATS. And that's how I did it. So use these strategies to actually get around the standard recruiting process. Yeah, for those of you, yeah, I'm gonna share that. Let me just share it with you folks right now. So those of you who haven't joined the community yet and want to join it, usually it's invite only. I've kept it like small for now, but I'm happy to have folks who've attended this session. So I'm putting it in the chat. You can just like uh, put your sign up on it, and you can basically. I'll be sharing more about maybe you can ask questions, follow up questions on this webinar there. Okay, let's move on. I'll take some questions. We're already inching towards the hour. I don't want to take too much of the time. Let's look at technical questions, right? Like I think like some of you may be software engineers, so you have an edge if you're trying to get into product management in these kind of questions. But in my Google interview, typically what was being tested was the ability that can this person talk to engineers on a day-to-day basis. That was the biggest thing. Like if uh, will this person be able to like understand what the engineers are saying. So I think what they basically are looking at, if you understand basic components of a mobile app, for example, right? Like you should know that there is like a database somewhere. There is a server which handles queries. There is like a front end, back end. I think that's the kind of depth, or I think it's not a depth, but understanding of the components, I would say, right? Like how does communication happen? Uh, Typically, these questions ask about a problem that you're trying to solve, and it may get a little bit technical. For example, they could ask you something like, let's say there are two systems trying to write to the database at the same time. How would you work with your engineer to resolve this? So basically, that's how I see it, and there's no like right or wrong answer. But what they're testing in this interview is typically whether you have an understanding of this ecosystem, right? Like if you have an understanding of how products are designed, right? Like what's a web server, things like that. I think it's pretty. Usually, this is asked, but this round can also become. Let's say if you're interviewing for ads, they could ask you very ads specific things. So I was asked that in my ads round, like understanding of the ads ecosystem, right? Like what's the CPM, like what's cost per thousand impressions, and so on and so forth. Those are like the technical parts. It really depends on the role that you are applying for. In general, what I would say is like my idea is in usually people. Uh, get it based on the role they're applying for, and sometimes it may just be a general interview where you don't get this round as well. So this is a like I would say a technical round is very uh, subjective to the kind of role that you're applying. If you're applying for ads, you would need to understand. So for one of the things I was asked is, like how many like what's the typical latency in an ad exchange network, right? Like just to see if I understand that. Like, and it's not that if you have to get it down right to the number of milliseconds, right? Or it's about getting the scale. Like, do I think it's in minutes or do I think it's in seconds? Like that's what they're looking at. If this person understands overall how it's working. So it's more like a check more than like a round. I think the first three rounds are definitely more important. Any questions on technical rounds that anybody has? And you can also tell me if this content is too much for people to get in. Like, I can also slow down if it feels like, oh, it's too much information. It's the entire process, and we can do. Let me know what some at least some feedback on, if you have any questions before I move to the last part, which is the googliness. It's called googliness. So yeah, any anything that you'd like to share feedback on? Is the content it's too much? We can like narrow it down, so on and so forth. So if there's no feedback, then I'll go and talk about googliness, which is the last interview. So by the time you've reached the fifth interview, that means you're doing well. At least Google stops interviews once if you have not done well. If you have reached the fifth interview, that means you have been doing well so far. At least that's my take on it. I was told by my recruiter that usually they end interviews once any of them goes really bad. Like, so the the person who's interviewing you gives you like a rating between like uh, highly recommended for hire versus not recommended for hire. It's a scale of 4, and if you're leaning towards like more like no hires, your interview stops. So if you're already in the googliness interview, that's a good thing. That Now in googliness, what you get asked is these are more questions like star questions. So these are like, tell me about a time when this happened, or let's say that it could be something like you are you there could be something like, you are in an elevator with a senior executive. How will you give them a 1 minute pitch on your latest product? Right, like that's the kind of question that you can be asked here. In general, like the best way to answer these questions is have, like, I think for those who are applying to mbas or who are applying may have these star stories, right? You may have heard of it a lot of times. It's just situation, task, action, result. So have those stories which talk about your previous experience, because some of these questions are typically, tell me about a time when you faced a setback at work, right? Like, and how did you manage it? Usually that's what's asked in these rounds, but googliness can go like literally anywhere. But in general, like, my principle is to have a few set of questions like this prepared that will help you uh, kind of like navigate the thing. But these questions are pretty random again. They don't You never know what's going to get asked, but they are more on the behavioral side, or more on the, like, or for example, one of the questions that you could be asked is, if you had like unlimited resources in the world, like unlimited engineering resources, unlimited money, what would you build and why? Right, like this is like a very open-ended question. It's just they want to see they can test how creative you are, they can test how communicative you are, and so on. So these are pretty open-ended questions. But in general, prepare star stories for any interview that you're going for. Forget product management, they will be used somewhere or the other. So I've also created a webinar on that, which was, I think, the fourth or fifth episode in the Aspire series, which I created. So you can watch that on the entire like star stories, how to create. Okay, I think in terms of content, we are at 45 minutes. I'll let me see if I have anything else that I would like to share. But any questions so far? I'm taking one question from the chat. Is having good schools and companies a prerequisite for shortlist at Google for PM? So I think I'll be honest here, right? If you have like FANG experience, I I think it's helpful. If you have FANG experience, it's very helpful because it kind of tells this person has gone through the process before, and it increases your chances for a shortlist. That's just a hard fact. uh, but I feel this can be circumvented. Let's say if you don't have a good school. By the way, school doesn't matter, I would say, at all for product, by the way. But companies do matter. If you don't have like a, let's say, a FANG company before, and you want to break into product, my number one advice to everybody would be to actually just get a role at a startup or a smaller company first, and then transition. That's the easier way than just applying to Google directly, because Google, I think, is biased towards uh, big companies name, because it kind of like tells them that this person is already done something in big tech, understands how big tech works. So there is a bias. I would not disagree to that. So the way you do it is just get a role in a startup first and then try to pivot. They highly value, though, like if you don't have like, let's say, FANG experience, but you have, for example, a good, like very solid startup experience, which is not a FANG, right? Let's so many great companies which are building right now, and YouTube is building in the similar areas. I'm just giving an example of YouTube, so that could be a good fit for you to apply. Let me see what content I had to cover. Yeah, I think I shared the pro tip: prepare with the mock. uh, yeah, I think in general, like my tips why traditional methods have been failing for product management is, number one, ATS, right? Like ATS is your nemesis, right? Like you have to get to cross ATS, you have to be very strategic about your job search, because the first look at your resume is not even by a human, it's by a machine. They basically see whether a human reader will pick it up or not, and they 100% look at keyword matching. So uh, I'll I'll put a link into something which would be helpful for everyone here, which is the last webinar. I don't know if you have watched it, but it was like for 18 minutes, and I covered like literally this entire thing on how to break ATS. I think it's not for product management specifically, but it's general. How do you like? I'm gonna put the link. It's not a very long video, so you should definitely watch. Yeah. So this one talks about how you break into ATS, right? So that's something that you should, if you haven't watched it, check it out after this. It's only 18 minutes or 20 minutes, but it helps because it's how you cross ATS. I talked about how you can use LLMs, which LLMs to use within OpenAI, which is the best one. How do you use it? Just check it out. It's a helpful thing. I used it. We didn't have so many advanced models back then, but to some extent it helped. I talked about this in the start, cold referrals, and this is also Akhil's question on how do we break in. I think in general, the idea is having a warm referral, right? And the way you start a warm referral is basically writing a good email, cold email. And that's also covered in the same link that I shared. So you can watch that later. But the idea is whenever you're applying, try to get a warm referral that this person actually says really good things about you, so that you get picked. And the other thing was changing the mindset from a passive applicant to proactive connector, right? In my opinion, like job search is changing. um, it's not the traditional job search anymore. You cannot just apply to the post and then be like, I'll get a shortlist and wait, right? Try to reach out to the hiring managers on LinkedIn. You can find who is hiring very easily. People make these posts, and reach out to them in a personalized way, in a way which, for example, I was talking about, hey, I have been building this using Lovable. In consulting I did this, and this is why I'm interested. So please don't be a passive applicant. Like, don't think that you'll apply and then you'll get a job like just by sitting. You have to be very proactive about this. You have to reach out to the people. You have to understand like what they are looking for and build those connections, right? Like, I cannot stress that enough. So let me now wait and answer some questions folks may have in the chat. I think for all those who joined, I would say, and the content officially of the webinar is done in terms of just breaking into product management, my strategies. So if you, before going, consider subscribing to this channel and like liking the video if you haven't. I'll stay back for questions other people may have, and this can be anything under the sun. You can ask me about your MBA, product, job search, whatever that you want to ask. I'll be taking questions one by one now. So thanks everyone who's watched so far. I'll be taking questions. You can stay back for the questions and ask any questions that you may have. uh, so I'm taking Resita's question first. Uh, to transition from 8 years old Salesforce QA to product management, does MBA make sense? Or MS in a specialization like PM would help? Um, so I think if you're trying to go from QA, which is, I think QA is quality, like testing, to product management, I think I think yes. I think it helps. I would say like it depends on what your long term goal is, right? Specifically, product managers come from all fields, right? Like in YouTube, we have people who have studied economics in their undergrad, or they've studied psychology. So it's not really tied to your job. I would say it's about uh, being able to demonstrate that skill set. I think it does help to have maybe a more specialization, I would say, in terms of in compared to a general product. Like, I didn't find honestly like the MBA degree very helpful for the product management role. This is like, I thought when before coming to the US that product management, the best way to get an MBA and go. I don't think it helped that much, because I would have loved more specialized knowledge, and the world is moving towards more specialized knowledge, right? So, for example, understanding how LLMs work, understanding how data science is evolving, I would say an MS in a specialization in is a better way to land these roles, right? Than a more generalistic MBA. I don't think MBA is very helpful in general for product management. I'm taking the next question now, who's from Akhil. In I'm a 3-year PM out of undergrads. Yes. This one company I was interviewing got a little too technical in the last round. Something to be wary of. Yeah, I think the problem today is, right. Like, if you think about it, coding has become pretty democratized, right? Like now everybody's able to code, and we'll get to a point maybe in 2 years where everything else, entire coding would happen through AI. It's like maybe today it's like 60%, 70%. In some companies, it may go to like 99%. So we'll be at 100% almost automation. So I think the differentiator would become those who actually understand the technology versus those who simply use it. So if you are interviewing for a company which is for a PM role in a very like LLM company or in the Gen AI space, it's important to understand, for example, how transformers work, right? So Google wrote the first paper in 2017. Attention is all you need, and it all started from there, right? Like, what are transformers? What's a context window? How do we? What's when you actually type in the query? What happens behind the scenes for ChatGPT to run and get the data for us? Things like that I think are important. So I would just say like it is in the future it's going to become more and more of a differentiator where understanding the technology is going to be an edge. So I always tell, don't just use it, also understand how it works. That is going to be an edge. I'm going to be taking the next question from Prince of Heaven. Does networking with present Google PMs and going to Google networking events a good effort? Don't waste your time on any Google events. I don't think going to Google events will help you get the job. Uh, I think the thing is networking with present Google PMs, unless they know you from before and you're just trying to get them, it'll be very hard for them to give you a very strong referral. So I think the best way for you would be to like do a couple of coffee chats with Google PMs, gauge if they're ready to give you a good warm referral. That's way better time invested than going into any networking events. Don't do any like Google specific events. Although I would say referrals matter a lot more in smaller companies than bigger companies. So if you're looking for product in smaller companies, I would highly recommend like doing coffee chats and networking. Go to all their events. That helps. In companies like Google, they're too big to even notice who's joining these webinars or networking events they host. I don't even know if Google hosts any such events. But okay, the next question. I wanted to know your thought process. Were you not interested in joining exciting startups as a PM? How would you say big tech helps you more over startups? Oh, that's a good question. It's a bit personal. Like, why did I join big tech and not like a startup? I think so. One of the reasons I came to the US was to get into the ecosystem of Silicon Valley, like how tech works here. And I don't have big tech. By the way, I don't have any big tech experience before Google. So I was pretty much without any big tech experience. In Europe, I worked in a company called Hilti, which had product owner experience, which I would say is more leaning towards program management and not really product management. So I didn't have that experience. And the reason I worked in a company like Google, because I think a company like Google also teaches you how do you work in a structured environment, like how are experiments run, it's a great experience to have to just learn how tech works in Silicon Valley. Startups are more exciting. It's about what phase of life you are in, right? So I just got married recently, and some of you who follow me on Instagram may know that. So I want to take some time in that phase right now, and maybe we'll see what happens later. So it was a more a personal choice, what I decided, but there's no bad answer here, right? It depends what you're looking at, startups and other stuff. So it depends, yeah. uh Next question. Okay. I'll take Shobika's question first, because I answered Akhil your question. So I'll take Shobika's question first. Does the geography of the referrer matter? In the sense, if the job is for US and the referral is from an Indian-based employee? Yeah, that doesn't matter. So you could ask anybody in the world, any Googler in the world, to refer you for any location. That should be not a problem. So the portal is the same. Basically, you just get an email to apply. In fact, the way referral at Google works is, let's say if I were to refer anybody here, they would send me an email with the blurb. I would put it into the portal, and then you would get an email saying you can apply to 3 jobs within the next 90 days. So that's how it would work. You don't have to uh, uh, limit yourself geographically. Okay, so Akhil is asking, lately many PM openings are asking for domain expertise. PM by nature is to have good transferable skills, but lately what I mentioned is what the scene has been like. How to navigate this? So the thing is, I just feel like the time to get domain expertise is terribly overrated, or overestimated by folks, right? if you start doing something today, it'll take you like a week to become better than 90% of the people on it. So you don't I don't believe in the concept that you need to spend like months to become an expert on something. You need to have a decent understanding of that knowledge, and depending on the company that you're applying for, that helps, right? So for example, if you're getting into a role in ads, a basic understanding of how ads work wouldn't take you, like, if you spend dedicated 5-6 hours, you'll know a lot more about ads than a general person would know. And I think that's good enough expertise. That expertise does not mean you write a research paper on ads. It just means you understand how ads work. So that's my 2 cents on it. But I think you can become you if you want, you can become an expert on anything that you like. It's about putting in those few 6-7 hours, and it's expert. I think we use the word expertise loosely. Expertise is, in my mind, is just knowing more than what the average person knows about ads or any other domain. uh, Okay, do we have any other questions? I see. Otherwise, I'd just say thanks everyone who joined. Really appreciate. I know it's like late night for you folks. I'm in San Francisco. It's morning for me. Usually, I do these webinars in the evenings for my time, so morning for folks in India, and for folks in the US, it's morning now. But we can definitely chat